Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of r/IDOWorkHereLady, where people who actually work at places get mistaken as regular Joe Schmoes. In this episode, I've got 4 stories for you. You'll hear about a band member mix-up, an employee who's mistaken as a druggie, one employee who's mistaken as a thief, and we'll finish off with a short one, where a customer thinks an employee is homeless. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This first story is titled, I'm with the band. Really? I'm a guitarist with a cover band. I'm not the coolest looking guy, and many people don't believe I'm actually a guitarist, let alone a member of one of the busier bands in town. In case you don't know, one of the biggest cliched phrases is, I'm with the band. I had set up earlier in the day, but about 30 minutes before the first set, at 9 o'clock, I noticed my guitar amplifier had died. Shit. I start panicking and ran out the main entrance to the parking lot to get my backup amplifier. On exiting, I told the bouncer that I was in the band and needed to get something from my car. 5 minutes later, carrying my 60-pound amp, I try to get back in. The bouncer says, "Hey, back of the line." I said, "I just came out 5 minutes ago and I told you I was with the band. Really, I'm with the band." The bouncer looks me up and down and obviously doesn't believe me. After all, logic dictates that normal guests carry around 60-pound guitar amps. Therefore, I'm just another guy trying to cut in line. People in the lineup start laughing and shout, "Let us in, we're with the band too." I start arguing, but still no luck, and the bouncer's getting pissed off. The singer calls me at 8:55 asking, "Where are you?" I explain. The singer comes out and the bouncer doesn't believe him. At 9:15, we're now 15 minutes late for the first set, and the singer and the bar manager come out. The bar manager absolutely rips the bouncer a new one in front of the line of 50 people. And that's my story of how I had to use the most cliched phrase in rock band history. This second story is titled, I Do Work Here, and I'm epileptic, not a drug addict. I had been job hunting for months. I went on job interviews at businesses from grocery stores to clothing outlets. On the applications, they had a line asking if there's any disabilities. And yes, back then they could ask that on a job application. I would be called in for interviews, and they saw my hand shaking, and I told them that I also have familial tremors, but they would not interfere with my abilities to complete a task. I would hear, "Well, you seem qualified, but with your epilepsy and your hand shaking, I'll have to discuss it with the store manager, or HR, or even corporate. Never to hear a thing my way." I know what you think. Why not file a lawsuit and sue? You do not know how hard it is to prove something like that for a person with a disability. I went into a restaurant with a sign that said, "Hiring dishwashers," and Mr. S took a look at me, saw my hand shaking. I told him about my tremors and also about the epilepsy. He looked at me, patted me on my back, said he was sorry to hear all of that, and then said, "Either wear a hairnet or get your hair cut. You know, health codes and all. Be here Monday morning. I'm so sorry to hear about that, but your butt better work just as hard as everybody else." And the rest is history. I'd been working for Mr. S for about a year or two by now, and had gotten to work about 20 minutes early, so I sat in a booth. The server asked me what I wanted since employees get a free meal. The server returned with my fries and bacon cheeseburger. I took a bite out of my burger and noticed the man and woman staring at me. They quickly looked away when they saw me looking at them. As I took a bite out of my burger, I heard the woman say in a loud whisper, Look, his hands shake, oh my goodness." I took another bite and noticed the clock on the wall. It was time for me to take medication, so I did, and then I heard the woman gasp, "No wonder he's shaking, he's a junkie, did you see that? Why are they giving him free food?" Now this is nothing I haven't heard before, being called a junkie and hooked on something. I went back to eating and wanted ketchup on my fries, but there was none on my table. So instead of bothering the server who had paying customers, I went to the server's alley. The server's alley is where the condiments, glasses, ice, and yes, the cash registers were. When I returned to my seat, she was talking to Mr. S. After a brief conversation, Mr. S called me over and asked me why I went to the server's alley, and I told him. Mr. S then said with very thick sarcasm, I explained to this beautiful, caring woman that it was time for epilepsy medications, so that's why you took some pills, and that you're my actual employee. This wonderful human didn't believe me and thinks that people with epilepsy always wore protective helmets because people with epilepsy were always falling down. All I said was, "It's nothing I haven't heard before, I'm used to it." Now she looked shocked and then tried turning it around and said, "I was just being a good Christian trying to help you stop a crime, and this is what I get? This is how you treat me? I'm sorry about your disease, and when I get to church, I'll light a candle for you and say a prayer." I replied, "Thank you, and I'll light a candle for you and pray you learn to be less judgmental. You know, judge not lest ye be judged." Her husband turned around to look at me like he had no words to say to apologize. I just looked at him knowingly. Mr. S and I looked at each other and laughed, and he said, "God, I love doing that." And I said, "Mr. S, you're terrible. That's gonna be a nice conversation they'll have when they get home." Then I sat down, ate my fries and bacon cheeseburger. This next one's titled, "You're Stealing." No, I'm not. A little backstory. I was once a male volleyball player for a small high school in Florida a couple of years ago, and recently had a situation that reminded me of the story. Now, while I was in high school, I worked a part-time job at a small sports store. It was not part of a chain, more of a local shop that you could go to and hang out and buy equipment. Me and my friends first came across this place after we joined the volleyball team freshman year. Now, many people may not know about men's volleyball because it's not something you see often, but where I live in Florida, it's a huge deal, and this is the season I got manager because not only was I a hard and trusty worker, but also a volleyball player like the owner was when he was in high school. I had worked at the store up till my senior year, so a lot of people knew me and trusted me to get the equipment they needed. Now, sorry if I have bad dialogue in the story, but this is all true, so don't be an ass in the comments. Also note that I have social anxiety behavior, which will come into play later. One day, a man and his son, who I'd say was about 13, walked in and asked where the football gear was. At first, I looked at the dad with the "Are you sure?" expression because his son looked really small and scrawny. I assumed the kid was just starting out, so I stood up and pointed to the second aisle in the shop, and when I did this, the kid looked scared out of his mind. Now, I'm a big guy with a height of 6 feet, and I practice a lot, so I have a bit of muscle. However, I have social anxiety outside of my circle of friends, so I got nervous and sat down. This relieved the kid and made me feel better. After a couple of minutes of sitting on my phone, I decided to go to the back real quick to take stock and to fill up some of the shelves with our latest shipment of products. While I was doing this, I hear someone shouting, going off about, "There's some kid stealing equipment, and where are the employees?" When I come out, I see what the problem is, and I see the dad giving me a death glare. He then walked up to me and got into my face to chew me out and asked what I was doing back there and said, "You should be in the front like all the other customers." But when I tried to get a word in, he would just keep interrupting, saying that he would tell the manager what I was doing, and that I was trying to steal equipment for my own selfish self. And this is where my social anxiety kicks in, and I start tearing up a bit. Now, a lot of people would say, "You're the manager, just kick him out." But when a random guy's shouting at you, and you have social anxiety, it's kind of hard. Finally, the owner comes out of his office to see what the problem is, and the dad says, "This kid is stealing equipment from you, and your employees are nowhere to be seen." I look at the owner with tears in my eyes, and the owner looks at the dad and says, "Sir, this young man does in fact work here." And the dad says, "He has no uniform." The owner explained to him that they don't wear uniforms, and the dad says, "This is ridiculous, all stores have uniforms." The owner then replied, "No, they don't, sir. Now, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." The dad wonders why, since he's done nothing wrong, and the owner says, "You've shouted at my employee and caused a huge scene. Now leave." The dad then grabbed his son and stomped out in anger, and that was the last I saw of him. Now that I look back, I should have kicked him out, but back then I was scared and a different person than I am now. This last story is titled, "I Have My Uniform On." I worked as a cashier when this happened. The uniform was a blue vest and badge, which I was wearing. I was at the cash registers ringing up a customer and opening the drawer to exchange money. I ran out of nickels, so I called my supervisor and reported, "I need nickels." My customer at the time said, "You need money?" She reaches into her purse and hands me all of her spare change. Then, she starts telling me about a charity she started to encourage people to give pennies to the homeless. Then she offers to write me a check for $20. I stood there absolutely flabbergasted. I didn't know what to say, but I was thinking, I have a job. I'm at work right now. Didn't you just see me ring up your groceries? Finally, I told her no thank you, so she didn't give me the $20, but she left me holding all of her loose change. I feel like that was a ploy to give you all the change that's been weighing down her purse. Anyways guys, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of r/IDOWorkHereLady. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. If you aren't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future stories. I upload pretty much every day for your daily dose of Reddit stories. See you guys in the next one.